Hello, everyone. This is Senthil Palaniappan, President and CEO of Sennovate. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, good afternoon, depending on what other part of the world you are in. Thank you for joining this webcast, Idaptive Business Solution for Password Breaches and Identity Theft. We have a presenter here, Brian Krause, Director of Worldwide Channels at Idaptive. So first, a few housekeeping items. Please ask your questions anytime in the question window, then we will answer it appropriately, or we will cover all the questions at the end. So please feel free to rate this webinar in the end. So your feedback is very important, and put out of the feedback, that definitely value that. And also, please feel free to share this content to anybody that you think might be useful to. So having said that, I know here I would like to introduce our presenter, Brian Krause. He is Director of Worldwide Channel for Idaptive, and he's having over 19 years of experience in various companies such as TDW, HP. Last 5 years he's with Centrify, and now with Idaptive. So Brian has a lot of experience in sales strategy, marketing enablement, and licensing, and partner and channel management. It's just briefly about myself. Having said that, let's jump into the webinar. Brian, stage is yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on today. I greatly appreciate it. And we're going to be talking a little bit about next generation access and some strategies and a framework that we can utilize to help make it easier to manage identities out there. Because clearly the world is changing quite a bit with regards to how we identify the correct users accessing various applications. You know, when we look at a business, businesses are really built on relationships. And these relationships can be multi-part. Some of them are with our employees, with the partners. Additionally, others are with our customers. And at the end of the day, for our businesses to work, we need to truly have a bond of truth and confidence. Now, the core strength of any bond starts with identity and access. These are the first and primary means to connect our employees based on their roles, devices, and various apps, to connect partners into your supply chain, and allow your customers to access your brand and services you offer. However, if these connections are broken, the bond erodes, and as a result, our business greatly suffers. So what I wanted to just talk about to start with is just lay a quick groundwork of, you know, what does the identity marketplace look like right now today? Now, when we take a look at the current threat landscape, 81% of all breaches are a result of a weak, stolen, or default password. And when we look at where we're at in the world of security, we're spending over $130 billion a year on various cybersecurity products and services. But when we take a look at this, only 10% of these budgets generally make it to IAM and helping secure that. And this starts to become rather problematic, especially if we consider that almost all of our breaches are a result of some sort of password issue, but we're not even really going after fixing the problem. So what we need to really look at is, what can we do to build a proper framework and look at security in a slightly different way to help our cause. And this comes down to looking at zero trust as an approach to identity, really with the concept of never trust, always verify, which I know this sounds kind of similar to what we've done in security for forever, but the reality is, in the past, we generally trust then verify, right? We let somebody have access into a network, and once we've authenticated them once, we never really inspect this person again, and there certainly isn't any sort of continuous authentication process happening. So when we drill into this, it's great that we say, hey, you know what, security is broken. We have all sorts of problems. Things aren't working. But more importantly, what is it that we can do? And what we can do is we can start to look at new approaches to build out a next generation access structure. And with this framework, what we like to do is first take a look and verify every user that's accessing an application. This comes down to just knowing that, hey, as a user, you're only as good as your username and password. I mean, that's how the world machine sees you. Do we know what these username and passwords are? Do we have them in a single repository? And can we assure the identity with, strong authentication? Once we do this, we need to validate devices as they connect, right? Because yes, it's great that I know you're the right person and I verified your identity, but if you're coming in off of some janky device, iPhone that's been jailbroke or doesn't have a passcode on it, maybe doesn't have various software that we want to see there, this starts to pose a very real threat. And then the third thing we really need to look at is how can we come in and intelligently limit your access to various applications, right? It's just a basic concept of least privileged access, but say, hey, you know what? Let me only give you the applications necessary for your role, and let me provision just the level of access you need. Now, if we're going to do this continuous authentication and we're going to verify you every single time you access an application, and if I'm going to slap MFA on you every single time you access an application, this will drive you absolutely insane, and you will hate this infrastructure. It's not going to work. So this is where we really need to come in and layer AI and user behavior analytics into this process. So we really take a look and say, hey, what is your state as a user? If I can determine what a normal behavior is, and that I know that you log in during certain hours to the same several applications, however, I see you logging into another one that you normally don't, maybe this is the time I would like to apply MFA for security reasons. And by taking this sort of approach and using all the data we have out there, now we can start to increase user productivity and make it easy to authenticate, easy to access your applications. And unfortunately, in the world of security, easy and less stressful doesn't always go with our craft. So let's kind of break down each of these pillars. So when we look at what does it mean to verify a user, first and foremost, it starts with single sign-on. And I know single sign-on is kind of a word that's thrown out there, and it's not exciting at all, and I'm a single sign-on guy. But it's so much more than just saying, hey, let me have one consistent username and password. This is very much about me consolidating identities so I have a single identity store, or I bring my identity stores to just a couple. So maybe I have Active Directory I'm using for a lot of my internal workforce. Maybe I'm starting to use, Google Directory or something like that for, some of my remote users. But having a way to really bring these identities so I have an easy way to manage that. Now, once I've got good control on my identities and I'm removing the use of passwords and I'm authenticating using, SAML, stuff like that versus just people manually typing things over and over, I do really need to take a look and say, hey, how do I truly provide or prove this is the correct user and it's not just some, piece of malicious software logging in? Well, I do that with MFA. Now, MFA, what's always kind of tricky about this is MFA's been around forever, certainly not a new concept, but as we have networks that are all over the place where we're hosting applications, hosting infrastructure in the cloud, we've got our on-prem stuff, VPN tunnels, really need to have a flexible platform that says, hey, you know what, I can't walk around with a pocket of key fobs. I need just a way that is going to work for how I want to access. And maybe that's pushing a text, maybe that's pushing to an app, doing a phone call, you name it. But we have to be very adaptable in this. just so we can serve the needs of the user and truly provide some great security. And then finally, with this MFA concept and sign on, we do need to be smart about this. And this is where using user behavior analytics and taking a look at policies that see how you interact over time really allows us to adapt. And where we see a lot of this is, there's some that are going to be more static policies, right? That if we're going to put like a geo-velocity in there and just say, hey, I see you're logging in from, I live in Chicago, and I've logged in this morning as I am right now, but 30 minutes from now, I'm logging in from Atlanta. Well, unless I'm on a rocket ship or something like this probably isn't overly likely. So because that risk profile has elevated, let's start removing access and just shutting people down. So we need to have strong policy, but we do need to look at behaviors as well. The second pillar that we get into comes down to validating devices. And when we look at device validation, this first starts off with doing MFA at endpoint login. So this is saying, hey, when you log into your laptop, desktop, your Windows or Mac or whatever the case may be, do I know you're the right guy logging into that system? And that's pretty easy to do with MFA. At least at this point, now we have a higher level of assurance, correct person's coming in. From there, it's really taking a look at this device and the apps on various devices. I mean, this is where we get more into talking around phones and tablets. But it's coming in and saying, hey, do I know what device is there? Do I know what devices my users are using? Do they have the correct apps? Do I have a way to push down apps? If I want you to have email on your phone, can I make it easy for my user to enroll and just push that down and automatically it spins up and they have access to the email system? And then as we look at these devices, we really need to be aware of context. And what I mean by that is we can have different policies of how you're going to access applications. It's not so much that anyone really cares about our users' devices. We just care that when they're accessing our applications, we feel that that device is in a secure posture. So a lot of this starts coming in and saying, hey, you know what? If I'm going to let you use your own phone, I'm cool with that idea. And as part of that, I might want to put a certificate on the phone. I might want to, put passcodes on. If you're on the latest iOS, I might let you access more applications than if you're on an older version. And once we start taking a look at the various postures, we can start making smart decisions about what you're allowed to access. Which leads us to the idea of limiting access. And this is done really through lifecycle management and saying, hey, you know what, as a user, I know you're going to come onto my network. You're probably going to hang around for a while at the company. Hopefully you'll get promoted. You'll move into new departments, help us grow. That's great. But as this happens, really need to take a look and make sure that we don't have application access creep, that I have a good way to say, hey, you know what, now that you've been promoted, I changed your roles in the directory, let me automatically give you that extra access into Salesforce. Hey, you moved out of finance and went over to sales or something like that. Let me make sure we automatically remove that person out of NetSuite so that's not an open risk we have. Now, we can never do everything based purely on policy because the world's ever changing. So can we take a look at this and make sure that, hey, can I give you a way to request access for additional apps? And as part of that request, I might need to tie into other systems, some of the ITEL systems out there, or just have a way that says, hey, you know what, you can have access, but I'm only going to give it to you for a limited amount of time. And then finally, as part of the way to limit access is really getting rid of the use of VPN whenever possible. Certainly for our administrative staff out there that's working on networking gear, I mean, there's certainly times that they need to VPN into things to get to a network per se. But for the vast majority of your users, they're just going to an application. They don't need access to the network. They need access to the app. So can we remove that and only give direct access to that application? And the way in which we really do this is we build it on a complete identity platform, which is a cloud-based software. It allows us to verify our users. This is using various single sign-on technologies, integrating with identity stores, allowing you to do Active Directory federation and SAML authentication and all that good stuff. Having software that can tie into mobile phones so we can start using those as authenticators and start applying MFA policy on endpoints. And once we do this, we have this tied into an entire cloud that is allowed to do machine learning. And as we learn about that, that's where we're able to do all these great concepts I talked about with blocking access on the fly, applying MFA as your situation changes as a user. And because of all this tied together, now I have some very rich security logs that I can start feeding into my SIMs and really start building out better policies of how I'm managing my company and lead to having more automated secure ops. So now what I've talked about here is I've definitely talked kind of on a high level side of just, what is our approach? How do we talk to our customers and help show them the way of building a better identity platform in general. But the question always comes up, okay, this is great, but what are the products you actually deal with? And we have primarily two sets of products. One is related to applications, and that would be our app services products, and this is what's actually would fall under the sets of SSO, various provisioning lifecycle management, which is going to have all of your various SCIM connectors and do all that, great REST API call sorts of stuff. And then our app gateway falls in there, which is software that you can deploy across the network, connected to the domain that allows us to use your on-premise domain to know about your users. But in particular, we can also use some of that same technology to provide access to those individual applications. And then the other set of product is really about the endpoints. This is going to be for mobile device management. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily a mobile device management company per se, but we manage devices so you can have secure access to your applications. So they really end up going hand in hand. And then because of the endpoints and the needing to do MFA at them, that falls into that area where we can start saying, hey, based on various conditions, whether it's desktop level or mobile phone level, we're going to provide access. And all of these products are tied together with a single platform that is doing our MFA, and analytics is looking at every one of these pieces so we can start making smart decisions. Now, what I wanted to lead into next is, kind of talking a little bit more, how does this look, in the real world within your environment, and move away just purely from the theoretical talk of, hey, you know what, you should, but let's take a look at a typical environment and some of the struggles and how we might go about solving those struggles. So when we look at many companies, it'd be nice to say, hey, you know what, I've started off on a clean slate, and I guess every once in a great while you get that opportunity, but that's usually not the case. So we take a look at it, and most of us at this point have moved over to Office 365. I mean, Microsoft has certainly encouraged that concept, and now we're running into a situation where we have some of our services on-prem, some are out there in the cloud. Because they're in the cloud, it's certainly driving different behavior of, hey, how can I access this stuff? And I can't just tell you, oh, use your laptop only. Now, as we do that, I mean, certainly we got plenty of other big cloud providers that are really becoming the central controls of our company. Salesforce is pretty common for many of us out there anymore, as that's how our business is run. And when you start looking at that, it's like, okay, well, now I got some of these Microsoft identities in Office 365. I got to figure out ways to provide people access to Salesforce. And then once I've given you access to Salesforce, there's that whole other nightmare of what parts of Salesforce, what apps within there do you need access to. And then there's going to be a billion different tools out there. I mean, here, Dropbox with the collaboration, all of us use something, maybe your OneDrive or Box or I don't know, there's tons of them. You start, adding these on, and what really started as, hey, I just have a couple apps out there, becomes something of 30, 50, 100 different apps out in that environment. And if you're a large enterprise, I mean, it could be 15,000 or some ungodly number like that I've seen. And now we really start running into this conundrum that, hey, I have this legacy identity system out there. It served me well when I was, just running a bunch of applications on my servers, but now I need to manage these users that are remote. So this is where we start looking at and saying, hey, you know what? I've got Active Directory. Everybody's been using that for forever. It's sort of not a new thing by a long shot anymore. How do I make this work? Well, in the world of Microsoft, I mean, there's some nice ways to do that, with their products. But then if I want to start expanding these out to these other platforms I got, we start running into a breakdown that now it's starting to get a little bit more difficult. And as I plumb this, I run into some real problems. And then of lately, where I've really seen a lot of our various, clients, customers, and just marketplace go is everybody is moving into AWS. They're moving to Azure. I mean, it's no longer just a test type of a prototype of saying, hey, I'd like to do this. It's production servers going out there, and we're all doing it. And now we got to look and say, hey, well, I got applications running in there. And I think everybody who's done a cloud migration can attest to, it isn't just so easy as I take an image of my servers laying on my racks and throw it up there. I got to re-architect this. And then the second I look at it, all of a sudden there's going to be a bunch of different IAM modules that are popping up in these products. And you have to start rebuilding out and figuring out, okay, well, do I replicate my AD up there? Do I build out some sort of new directory? And now we got a bunch of questions that are starting to slow our roll, if you will. Now, of course, as we've done this, because we got all of our new cloud apps out there, they're starting to hum along quite a bit. We run into the issue of, hey, you know what? I now need to give access via phone. It might be corporate initiative. It's just how people are demanding it. The reality is you just have to do it. There's no way around it. So at this point, we got to really manage these things, whether you own the phones or not. It just became your problem, and it has been your problem for a while at this point. So we tend to layer another solution in there. Now, of course, as we're talking all this access stuff, we're going to have our firewalls in there, right? Palo Alto is a common platform. It seems like I see heavily deployed across the place. And now we're using these guys for VPN. They're giving us access to various applications. They're controlling routes in and out of the network to apps. And we got to really take a look at this and say, okay, well, how am I going to leverage this platform to help me out? And then we also have, on top of that, the whole concept of, the Cortex engine that these guys are starting to have us look at. and with Cortex saying, hey, you know what, let's take a look at the logs off your next-gen firewalls and the Traps endpoint stuff. And now that we have this rich context here, we're starting to know more about users, but it's isolated in this one area of Palo Alto. Now, we've been talking about applications the whole time because this is an application access conversation, but we still have F5 sitting out there with our big IP infrastructure with the ASM modules running on there. And with that, we have the on-prem world that we need to give these users, you know, hanging out here on their phones or laptops, maybe in office, different office, you know, give access back into those on-prem environments to give them the apps they need. But we need to give it in a way that's easy for the user so they're not trying to log in a million different ways. And then finally, we've been talking this whole time about, you know, life cycles, right? And bringing new users on. And what is the biggest way we bring them on? Well, everybody starts at HR, right? And we've built them into the, you know, we put them into the HR system. And now once that's gone in from the IT perspective, it's on our plate to say, hey, you know what? Get this person access to their applications, send them their equipment, all of that. And to do that, you know, we might bring something like ServiceNow in, so we have a way to manage all these IT services, which is awesome, but it's not going to be fully automated from the point of putting them into HR to giving them access to the, you know, Salesforce or Office 365 or various apps on F5. So now we're really stuck in a situation where we got all these different identity infrastructures to get this to work correctly. And this is where a company like mine comes in. I haven't really talked too much about, you know, just us as a product set. But with Idaptive, we come in and we give a centralized identity broker. It's a platform that comes in there and can be your source of truth for authenticating across all of these environments. So we can leave Active Directory as the area you're building users out, provide a small cloud connector near that domain, have that talk to us, and now from here, because we're in between all of these different systems, we can manage all of it in one seamless manner. So you bring somebody into your Workday, we're going to see that, we're going to build their account out in Active Directory. That's going to then come back to us, and we're going to know what their role is. From that role, we're going to build out access to their 365, to their Salesforce. We'll give them access if they were to need it to various services in AWS. We'll throw in their access to F5 so they can see some of those on-premise apps. Now, we were talking about security, so it's important that, yes, we give access we give access and make that easy, but we need to make sure that what's being accessed is easy. So we're going to start tying in the phones, the Droids, the Apples, the Mac laptops, the Windows laptops. So we're going to take a look and say, hey, now I know this device is a legit device. And finally, we're going to tie into those other big platforms you have and say, hey, with that Palo Alto, you are using the Cortex network, and there's a lot of access decisions that are coming in here. If all of a sudden I see that you have an endpoint that looks like it's acting up, I'm going to slap MFA on that particular user so I can stop that threat in the seconds and minutes that matter. With ServiceNow, as you have people coming in and requesting access for new apps, we're going to automate that workflow for you from ServiceNow over to Active Directory to provision that access. So now that it's easy. So this is generally the way we walk in and we tend to help people out, is they call us up and say, hey, you know what, I'm having this itch here. I got a problem around, you know, Office, or hey, I need to automate some of my ServiceNow processes or do some bidirectional provisioning with Workday or something like that. It, you know, it doesn't matter which part. So we can come in and help on that one piece, but we can give you that full platform that scales up to allow you to take care of all of these other issues, and as it becomes more of a need, start plugging it to one identity broker, giving you a true hybrid environment. Now, what does this look like? Well, for the most part, what we have is we have a user portal. You publish the apps into this portal. Your user will go to a website, or you can put the apps at that desktop level in an app on their phone, use a native app on their phone. They click on the app, and at that point, they have been granted access and have logged in. It's literally as simple as that from the end user's perspective, which is where the enhanced productivity comes. As they click on various apps, depending what the policies are, that the user doesn't need to know, shouldn't know, doesn't care. And if there is an app that requires a little more security, they'll get presented with an MFA request. And at the end of the day, it's literally just a simple, clean interface to provide users access. And from just a high-level architecture standpoint, how does it work? Well, it's actually nice, simple, and clean, which I like. In the middle here, you got the cloud with our happy little lizard logo. That is our physical service, the way which connects into all of your various apps. We allow all your devices to connect in there. And the way that we connect to your AD that might be on-prem or applications on-prem is we put a small connector on site. And when I say small, we're talking an 89 meg Windows Services app that just resides on a Windows server. You put multiple out there for load balancing, all that good stuff. Now, once we do that, we have full communication back and forth, securely with 443 and all of that. And that is how we in general deploy across a network. And because of these connectors, it allows us to start tying multiple Active Directories. So if you happen to have 3, 4, 5, 80 different ADs out there, and another 5, 10 LDAPs, and you're using Google or something like that, yes, we can deploy those across all these different areas there to make it easy to bring it into one single central source of truth that allows you to manage your identity as a service at one point. And why might you want to do something like that? Well, in general, this isn't my words, this is from Forrester, but find companies that have mature identity practices, have 50% less breaches, and those that consolidate that spend 40% less on technology. And companies that adopt, I should say, next generation access, find that they're twice as confident when accelerating new customer and partner experiences. And they're 66% more confident adopting new mobile work models, just because there's now a simple way to see what's going on across the application world. And when it's cleaner and it's simpler, it tends to be more secure. And don't just take my word for it. I mean, we got plenty of third-party validation. Obviously Sennovate likes us. That's why they brought us on here. But we got, we're a leader in Forrester, their Wave, and then the Gartner Critical Capabilities has plenty of great stuff to say about us, along with the Coppinger-Cole report. I certainly encourage you to take a look at those to get some further validation on it. And at the end of the day, why Idaptive? We address the top of attack vector, compromised credentials. Our platform integrates across all the different technologies of SSO, MFA, your mobile device management or EMM, and behavior analytics. We support the full hybrid stack of applications of on-premise and cloud. And at the end of the day, we're trusted by over 2,000 customers, so clearly we must be doing something right, or else I don't suppose they would keep renewing their subscriptions with us. And then finally, market leaders like Gartner, Forrester, Coppinger-Cole, they recognize us as a leader, and that should at least give you some real confidence to say, hey, you know what, if I'm looking into doing some identity work, and I want a company to talk to that seems to be trusted. We're guys to talk to. So with that said, that is what I have today, and I'd certainly love to answer some of the questions coming in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian, for the wonderful presentation. And we have just move on to one of the case studies with the Idaptive partnership, where we have some success story to share. Then we will go to the end to take the questions. Having said that, with the Idaptive Sennovate partnership, I think we have we implemented recently one for a Silicon Valley technology company. The company's challenge was it is a global company having offices in U.S. and also other few countries outside of U.S. It's a global company. They have they are like, they have an analytical platform company. They do analytics for some of the financial manufacturing companies. For the large company, they impose the regulatory, the IAM and the regulatory compliance requirements as one of the key things for the, for giving them business. And that's also on their tight schedule. Then there's huge revenue at stake, and they will have to deploy SSO, MFA, PAM, and analytics as a part of their requirements. Their company was running Amazon AWS and other few cloud PaaS solutions, as well as they have many SaaS applications. They don't have a big capital budget to go with, so they wanted to be like cover everything in the operational budget, and they have all set to go exponentially because they have the large funding and as well as the huge customers waiting to be acquired. So the solution what Idaptive and Sennovate with this partnership provided along with the Centrify's infrastructure product, we provided everything that they needed: SSO, MFA, analytics, and infrastructure PAM solutions. And we was able to implement and deliver through Sennovate's managed security services. We delivered first application in 2 weeks, along with their Active Directory management and then group policies and everything streamlined. Then we put together a roadmap for 3 months to go live with 30 plus applications. We brought their server Linux and Windows Server infrastructure under PAM, and also we built all the necessary compliance reports for their auditing purposes. And they went through auditing and did everything. Everything worked well for them. And now that customer is a happy customer, they are now they grew this year about 200 plus, or almost 300% this year in terms of human resources or headcount, and things are happening seamlessly for them, and their HR and system administration and the VP of security, the CIO, all are really happy for this solution to be in place and work in the process, especially the processes in place. This platform is taking care of their pain point, and they were able to grow seamlessly. That is a case study about this Silicon Valley customer. That's a bit of a partnership with Idaptive and Centrify. We were able to implement successfully. Thank you for that. And finally, we come to the question and answer session. And couple of questions we have. One question probably, Brian, you can answer. Idaptive, when they go on a mobile app, so what are the information the mobile app from Idaptive collects? So any basically the privacy concern for this person who asked the question. So can you please take on this question?
Yeah, most definitely. So that privacy issue comes up all the time, right? It could be various things such as, hey, I don't want to put my company at risk that I all of a sudden have the Apple Pay information of your phone in my hand somehow, to just, hey, I don't accidentally want to delete some users' family photos from vacation and dive into that headache. And the reality is what we're doing is we're putting a client on the phone. With that client, there's a secure line of communication going back and forth. For the most part, we're looking at attributes of the phone. We're not actually looking at the data on the phone. So when it comes to that, we have definitely segregated ourselves to limit our risk exposure there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And another question is like, if any customization, right? If customer needs any new features or anything that's not in Idaptive today, how Idaptive handles this today?
The reality is we only get better when our customers let us know what they're thinking. So we go out of our way to really put quite a bit of time and effort into speaking with our customer base to find out what's working well. And then, there's always the not so fun conversation of what's not working well. And as we see that is how we really evaluate, pop that on our product roadmap and start building that into our product set. And I've been around 4 years and I've seen this happen countless times and times again, and I've been one of the drivers on plenty of the feature sets working with my customers and partners. So we are very much customer driven. As much as we'd love to sell you, this is what you should want, we want to give you what you actually want.
Wonderful. I think that's all we have. And thank you, Brian, for the wonderful presentation and the great partnership. And we have many success stories to share in the future. And thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar. And we'll be in touch in the next one.
Always a pleasure, Sennovate. You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.